Good evening.
Good evening. We'll get started in 1 minute. Thank you.
All right.
It's 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public hearing. My name is John Urino. I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. I just wanted to announce at the beginning that we have two cases on the docket for tonight. The first case is C92114-8709 East Tanque Verde, and the second case is case C92115 Ajo Way and I-10. Two other cases were originally scheduled for tonight, but they've been continued to November 18th. So if you're here for either the Breakmasters case, C92117, or the Pantano River case, C92116, those will be held on November 18th, not tonight. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. As I said, I'm John Urino. I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. I conduct rezoning hearings on behalf of the mayor and council, and I make findings of fact, which I put into a report and send along to the mayor and council for their final decision at the scheduled hearing before the mayor and council. We can go ahead and get started with the first case, which is, again, case C92114-8709 East Tanque Verde. Mr. Beal, would you go ahead and give us the staff report?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
This is a request by Brian Underwood of the Planning Center on behalf of the property owner Carol Hazel to rezone approximately 3.6 acres from SR Suburban Ranch to R3 Urban Residence Zone. The project is located approximately 500 feet north of Tanque Verde Road and 700 feet west of Bear Canyon Road. The preliminary development plan proposes 56 new apartment units in two-story buildings as phase 2 of the Place at Mason Ranch, a multifamily apartment community. The adjacent 6.12 acre phase 1 project located to the north and east of the rezoning site is currently zoned R3. The total project site area, including both phases, is 19.75 acres with a total of 312 apartment units proposed. And then the preliminary development plan shows 4 two-story garden-style apartment buildings with surface parking along the southern perimeter. 2 of the proposed buildings each have 16 units, and the other 2 have 12 units apiece for a total of 56 units on roughly the 3.6 acres for a residential density of 15.56. The eastern and western borders of the site are adjacent to a self-storage facility and a Lutheran church, respectively. And although no residents are immediately adjacent to the east or west, proposed building setbacks exceed minimum required by code. A 10-foot landscape border with canopy trees every 33 feet is also proposed along the western boundary. The proposed rezoning of the site from SR to R3 is appropriate for this location and is compatible with surrounding land uses and is in compliance with the Bear Canyon Neighborhood Plan and Plan Tucson, subject to compliance with the attached preliminary conditions. Approval of the requested R3 zoning is recommended. As of today's date, there have been 0 approvals and 2 protests. 1 protest is outside the 150 foot and 1 is within 150 foot. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Mr. Underwood, would you like to be heard?
Yes, sir. Just pulling up our presentation now. So it goes to the right. All right. Can everybody see that?
I can, thank you.
Okay. All right, so the subject property here, as Mr. Beal mentioned, it's, I'm sorry, my name is Brian Underwood and I'm with the Planning Center 2 East Congress here in Tucson. Getting ahead of myself here at the beginning of the evening here. As Mr. Beal mentioned, the property is 3.6 acres. It's highlighted here in yellow. And as you can see, it I believe Mr. Beal also mentioned that the Tanque Verde Casitas are here to the south. It currently takes its access from Tanque Verde Road along an easement on the west side of the Tanque Verde Casitas. And then the larger phase 1 portion here has access out to Bear Canyon Road. And that is actually where this project in its entirety will take its access from is Bear Canyon. There won't be any future access out to Tanque Verde Road. But as you can see, it's a bit pulled back from the intersection of Tanque Verde and Bear Canyon there, 2 major arterials, as the Casitas to the south, a church, Tanque Verde Lutheran Church to the west, and a family storage to the east there, and then the commercial centers between Bear Canyon and Catalina and east of Catalina Highway there. And really, we took our cues, our direction for this project from the Bear Canyon neighborhood plan. It's what's guiding future development within this area, and the proposed apartments are compatible with the existing land uses in the area, and specifically they are within the medium density residential designation that's identified for this area. So I have a further slide that shows kind of some other multifamily development in the area and how that kind of has fit in with this medium density residential designation from the Bear Canyon neighborhood plan. And that's why you see this pattern of development as you get closer to Tanque Verde and closer to Bear Canyon and Catalina Highway there. And in the Bear Canyon neighborhood plan, there is a policy that is tied to this medium density residential designation. And it proposes or it requires a maximum of 16 units per acre. And so our proposal is within that 16 unit per acre maximum. We come in at 15.4 units per acre, and that's for both phases. We are under that 16 units per acre. And the building heights are significantly lower than what would typically be allowed in the R3 zone. A 40-foot building height is allowed, but per the Bear Canyon neighborhood plan, those heights are further limited to a maximum of 30 feet. And then we have further limited the building heights even more to a maximum of 25.5 feet. And that's actually included as one of the rezoning conditions that's a part of this case here. One of the other policies that's included in the Bear Canyon neighborhood plan is the encouragement of access from a collector or arterial street. And as I mentioned, we will be taking access from Bear Canyon Road only. And then the neighborhood plan further discusses buffering and screening to provide a proper transition between neighboring land uses. And we, as Mr. Beal mentioned, we do have some landscape borders and some additional screening that's going in to ensure that compatibility between uses with what's existing there today. Excuse me. As I mentioned, there's a number of multifamily developments within the general vicinity here, not just the Tanque Verde Casitas directly to the south of us, but there's the Bear Canyon Apartments on the east side of Bear Canyon Road, and then there's another apartment complex even further east, just past the commercial center there on Catalina Highway. And it's worth mentioning that we've also seen some other activity, not just the phase 1 here is what we're showing as additional planned multifamily, but there's additional casita development being proposed up here in this white hatched area, the orange with the white hatch up off of Catalina Highway. So basically seeing a lot of this area within the neighborhood plan designated as medium density residential, starting to fill in as you radiate out from the major intersections here in the commercial centers. So taking a look at the surrounding zoning, as Mr. Beal mentioned, the property directly to the north is our phase 1 for this project, and it currently is already zoned R3. And so we would be looking to match that same zone with our R3 request on this SR parcel on the subject property here. To the west, it's also zoned suburban ranch, and to the south, the Tanque Verde Casitas kind of have a split zoning through the middle of them here, with the west half being O3 office zone and the eastern half being a C1 commercial zone. And the C1 continues as you move through A family storage and the Ace Hardware here and on through the intersection. This is just a snapshot of our notification area, the 400-foot radius that you can see here in the dashed line. Basically, 400 feet from this subject property that we're rezoning doesn't get us past doesn't get us past our phase 1 portion on the north side, but we do pick up a residence here on the west side, and then the Tanque Verde Lutheran Church on the west as well as the Casitas to the south and A family storage and a couple vacant parcels in the Ace Hardware there. So it was a fairly limited neighborhood meeting. We did have some of the folks from the north side here that attended. I believe that Geneva and her niece were pretty instrumental in getting those folks informed and having them at the meeting. So we appreciate Geneva doing that, and I believe she's on the call here this evening. So some of the issues before I get into the layout there on the phase 2, some of the concerns that we heard at our neighborhood meeting was mainly about landscaping and screening along the perimeter, and the impact there of new development on the existing backyards and this space over here on Geneva's property here. So that is one thing that we've been working with the developer, our client, on, and although it's not a part of this rezoning, we have been working diligently with them to confirm that there will be a perimeter wall around the entirety of the property, not just around the parking areas. So there will be a minimum of a 5-foot decorative masonry wall along the north here and the west boundary, and those walls would tie into existing walls along the church's property here and the Tanque Verde Casitas, as well as A family storage. So there's basically walls along the south and then the southern half of the eastern boundary here, and a wall here, and then a wall up to our northwest corner of the subject property. The other,
if I can interrupt, Mr. Underwood, if I could interrupt briefly.
Yeah.
So the new wall that you're discussing would be a 5-foot masonry wall on your the northern boundary of phase 1, as well as on the western boundary of both phase 1 and phase 2. Do I have that correct?
Yes, that's correct, except for the western boundary wall on phase 2. It already exists as part of the church's property.
Okay.
So the wall, and it may end a little bit before our northwest corner actually, and we're connecting that to that wall, to that existing.
Is that also is the existing wall there a 5-foot masonry wall?
Yes, it's a 5-foot masonry wall on the church's property there, and it actually is more like a 6 and an 8-foot wall along the south and east sides here.
And if I remember the file correctly, you are also planning on, or have agreed also, your client has agreed also to do landscaping along the western border where it's adjacent to the SR zoned property. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Reader.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Go right ahead.
No problem. Another one of the concerns that we've heard, and actually that I was just speaking with the developer about this afternoon or yesterday and today, was I've been in communication with Geneva's attorney, Mr. Jim Sackerson, and he explained to me some of the concerns, and Geneva had voiced these concerns during our neighborhood meeting about she has some livestock on the property, goats and alpacas and different things, and so there's some concern about the interest of seeing these animals there, and that potentially enticing someone to climb the wall and if they get hurt climbing over the wall on her property or do something with her animals. That could be a situation that none of us want. And so what we discussed are two things. Up here on phase one, we would be putting a steel band along the top of that 5-foot minimum wall so that we could add at least another foot of height to that. And then also installing some desert vegetation, some spiky cacti at the base of the wall here, so that it deters people from getting right up to it and trying to climb over. So that's a new development that just occurred today that we'll be making sure that we implement here along the west boundary. And then the other concern was about Bear Canyon Road traffic backing up if our access point here on Bear Canyon Road was past the center turn lane here. And as you can see in this aerial, the center turn lane, it does disappear as you get north of the phase one boundary here. But it does still exist. Our driveway comes in right about where this car is that I'm circling with my cursor. And so that center turn lane to make a left-hand turn into the property does still exist. So we won't have cars that are sitting in the through lane, the northbound through lane, blocking traffic for those that live further north along Bear Canyon Road. So taking a closer look here at phase two, as Mr. Beal mentioned, the 56 units are within 4 two-story buildings. We've tried to orient this to where the 12-unit building, the smaller of the two, because there's 12-unit and 16-unit buildings, is closer to the western boundary where the church property is. And we've also tried to stagger these buildings as well so that they're not, parallel to the western boundary, so that, it's, people looking directly west. Instead, their views are a little more oblique and a little less direct. And that goes the same for in between the buildings as well. We didn't want these buildings sitting parallel to each other with people looking directly into each other's windows. So that's why you see the stagger in these buildings there. And it also allows us to get some additional setback along, one side of the building. But I should mention that the setback requirement is 3/4 of the height, which is about 22 feet on a 30-foot building. And since we're only 25.5 feet tall, that's even less. So, and this setback here is at least about 60 feet. So in most cases, we're setting back much further than that minimum. We do have, some covered parking along the south boundary there, and even one covered row of stalls here next to the building along the west side. And then the rest is all uncovered surface parking. The circulation is around the west and south and east portions of the development here. and it ties back into the phase 1 circulation right around where the amenity or maintenance building is over here, and then back out to Bear Canyon Road. And there are 2 points of access, I should mention, along Bear Canyon Road over on the east side. And as you mentioned, Mr. Urino, in the materials, we are proposing a landscape border along that west side.
Okay.
And so in summary, it's a rezoning from suburban ranch to R3 in conformance with the medium density designation of the Bear Canyon neighborhood plan. It's compatible with surrounding land uses. We limited the density in compliance with the neighborhood plan. We reduced the heights as well. We've limited our access to Bear Canyon Road as well. And as I mentioned, we do have greater buffers and setbacks than what the minimum requirements are. And with that, I would open it up to any questions.
I don't have any further questions right now, Mr. Underwood. Thank you very much. Ms. Heller, if you would like to be heard, I would call on you first, since I understand from Mr. Underwood's presentation that you have been involved in this process. If you would like to be heard, I'd like to hear from you. If you would start with your name and address, that would be helpful.
Geneva. There you go. I can hear you. Okay. Thank God I have a granddaughter. Geneva Heller, 801 East Tankerverde. I'm not very good at these fancy phones. Yes, you answered a lot of my questions, and I realize progress is going on, and you're going to have the apartments. That's okay. I was most concerned about the wall, and you made me feel much better tonight, about the fact that you said it's going to be 6 feet and some steel on top and your cactus, because I was very concerned about people. I mean, people are people. They are interested in things, especially when you have odd things like llamas and they see them. And I thought that's why I talked to Jim Sackerson, because I was very concerned about people jumping over. And if some kid jumps over and gets hurt, is that my fault? So you've answered a lot of my questions, and I thank you.
Well, thank you for participating, Ms. Heller. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case?
My name is Lydia. I also live on Geneva Heller's property. I have one quick question.
Okay, and if you wouldn't mind, excuse me, I'm sorry. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and give me your full name.
Okay, Lydia, Lydia.
Yes.
S as in Sam, TINCHF as in frog, IELD.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of the property that's just north of phase 1, in that far northwest corner, I have a hawk. I'm a falconer, and I have licenses for all those things. Is there going to be a wall on that north side as well?
Along the north side of phase 1 was your question?
Yeah.
Yes, there will be a wall along the north side of phase 1. Yep.
Okay. All right. That's my only question.
Thank you for your participation. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, Mr. Underwood, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm closing the hearing on this case, and we'll move on to the second case for tonight. And that case is case C9-2115, Ajo and I-10. Mr. McLaughlin, would you like to present the staff report?
Yes. This is a request by Adam Call of the Planning Center on behalf of the property owner, Bruce Johnson of Canmo Partners LLC, to rezone approximately 2.09 acres located near the southeast corner of Ajo Way and Interstate 10. And this is vacant land, and the request for rezoning is from R1 and R2 to C2 zoning. The preliminary development plan proposes development that's of 2 phases. Phase 1 development proposes automobile sales with a 1-story office and a 1-story fast food restaurant with a drive-through lane. And phase 2 development proposes future elimination of the automobile sales use and replaces it with a second drive-through fast food restaurant. The site is surrounded by retail and commercial land uses, and this type of development on existing vacant land meets the infill and mixed use goals outlined in Plan Tucson and the Keno Area Plan. The proposed rezoning is appropriate for this location and is compatible with both existing and future surrounding land uses, and subject to compliance with preliminary conditions. Approval of the requested C2 zone is recommended. And to date, we've had 0 approvals and 0 protests received on this case. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Mr. Call, is that you?
Yes. I can start my presentation if you'd like.
Yes, please go ahead.
First, let me introduce myself. My name is Adam Call. I'm also at the Planning Center. I work here with Brian at 2 East Congress. And let me pull up my presentation and we'll show you a little bit more detail what we're proposing. It's not as colorful and as fun as Brian's, but we'll do our best.
Got some color in those maps.
Start this from the beginning. So as Mr. McLaughlin mentioned, this is for Ajo and I-10. This is located at 1980 East Ajo Way, Ajo and the interstate. So you can see Interstate 10 runs here kind of at a diagonal. The subject property is located fronting onto Ajo Way, and then the westbound on-ramp actually wraps around the east and south portion of the property. To the north, we have the Chevron gas station and existing In-N-Out. The juvenile detention court and facility is to the northwest, or northeast, excuse me. And then the property across the I-10 on and off ramp was recently rezoned and is currently under construction for a Raising Cane's and a Rudy's Texas Barbecue. And so it fits very well with the proposed uses that we're showing. The existing zoning to the north is actually I2, R1 to the northeast. The property to the direct east was originally R1. It's been ordinanced for C2, and we're just waiting on a map update for that. The subject property actually has split zoning. There's a little sliver of R2 on the far west corner, and the remainder of the property is R1. This is not an appropriate zoning for this piece. I don't know anyone that would want to have any residents being wrapped around from an interstate on-ramp and on a major thoroughfare. A couple existing site conditions. You can see the property is vacant with some minor vegetation, and you can see the views. It's highly visible from the interstate, making it a very prominent piece and good for the proposed commercial uses that we've selected. This is the phase 1 portion of the property. This will propose a drive-through restaurant on the western portion of the property with an automotive sales on the eastern portion, utilizing that frontage along Ajo and the on-ramp for vehicle display. Our original PDP that we submitted did not include the required turn lane that was put in the traffic impact analysis. So we went ahead and added that and submitted that to the city as well. I believe that was one of the conditions. So that calls for a continuous turn lane to access both driveways and to facilitate traffic flow onto Interstate 10. And with landscape borders, streetscape border along Ajo and along the on-ramp to I-10. Phase 2 will replace the automotive sales with another drive-through restaurant, and everything is appropriately parked and with enough landscaping to make this a functional and desirable location for 2 restaurants. We currently don't have any users identified, but I think this will be a nice corner for attracting tenants, given the surrounding uses and the future improvements to the Keno Sports Complex to the south. It makes this a very desirable area. So in short, though, that's our proposed rezoning. Are there any questions or any comments that I may answer?
I just have one, and what would be the trigger for going from phase 1 to phase 2 on the eastern portion of the property?
Yeah, ultimately there'll be a user. The applicant actually currently has an automotive sales business that he'll be relocating to this property and using it for the interim until a suitable user can be found for that second phase.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anyone in the audience like to be heard on this case? I don't hear anyone, so thank you for your presentation, Mr. Call. And I'm closing the public hearing on the second case, case C92115. And that concludes our cases for this evening. And I want to thank everyone for participating. And I hope you all have a safe and wonderful evening. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
You too.